Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy!
Good evening, everyone. And if you're listening to my voice right now, I'd like you to kindly close your eyes. It doesn't matter where you are, even if you're operating a motor vehicle, please just listen to this visualization exercise. Everything will be fine. And I'm going to take you back to a bitter cold January 2017. You still can't believe Hillary lost the election, but you're trying to make it work. You're taking it one day at a time, and you finally talked yourself up to getting out of bed, getting dressed, and you know what? Why not go see that movie everyone's been talking about? You know, the one about the coming of age, confronting immense challenges, some secrecy, and obviously the inevitable heartbreak, leaving the audience wondering what could have been. No, I'm not talking about Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I'm talking about Call Me By Your Name. And here, ready to chat
Beautiful.
all things Call Me By Your Name, are Tyler.
That's me. I'm here, and I gotta tell you, I really did feel transported by that visualization exercise. I was really into it. I appreciate it.
That's really good.
Doing the best I can. The interns really knocked it out of the park this week. And we also have Ben Lahorn up in Salt Lake City.
Ciao, Bella.
Lovely. Yeah, we got to go back to Italy.
Yeah.
Who knew we'd be back-to-back movies going back to Italy? If you missed our last episode, we covered My Own Private Idaho, which shocked all of us by transporting us out of the country.
Yeah.
So
It was not all in Idaho.
yeah.
Expect that.
False advertising. I'm suing.
Yeah, they should have included that in the title somewhere. But no, we are welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast. We are just three folks challenging each other and all of you to watch movies you've never seen before. You can find us anywhere you can find pods and on social media at Three Films Pod. And we are just the three of us tonight, which, you know, doesn't happen very often lately. Actually,
That's
lately
true.
it's happened a little more often, but
It's true.
it's very unusual. We had a really good run there where we're having a guest pretty much every episode. So this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like going back to our roots, though. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And in the theme of today's movie, I'm just going to refer to both of you as Ben. So hopefully that's not confusing.
Okay. That's cool.
I'm going to
I'll
call you guys
choose.
by my name.
I'll call both of you Matt. Oh wait, no, I have to
Perfect.
call you by my name. Shit.
Yeah.
Did I even watch this movie? Stay tuned and find out.
Oh no, but so we're in our second round here of we wanted to rein in the LGBTQ plus awareness month with some LGBTQ plus themed movies with those type of stories. It's important to us that not only are we expanding our cinematic horizons, but part of cinema that's at least important to me, but also the three of us share is just the horizons that it broadens across the board, and the empathy that we can sort of glean from art and what these artists put together.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the theme this round, this round. I'm stumbling over my words. I apologize. But my choice for this round was Call Me By Your Name. And I don't really have a crazy story or a big reason as to why I chose it, other than Timothée Chalamet's kind of one of the few up and coming young actors that has like garnered a lot of attention that I actually know the name of.
Yeah.
I feel like if you ask me to name anyone who's like between the age of like 18 and 30, I have like three people I can name.
Yeah.
And so
It's like when it comes to our recast, it's like there's 3 certainties in life. It's death, taxes, and Matt drafting Timothy Chalamet in a role. Like that kind of feels like
if there's somebody
every single time.
If there's someone under the age of 30 and they're an adult, it's like, I have one guy.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
My buddy Tim.
Tim will be perfect for this.
Just the person for this role.
Yeah. Can Adam Driver do it? No. Okay. I know someone who can then.
Yep.
Timothy Chalamet.
That's 100% true. And so with the Chalamet of it all, I chose this movie. I also happen to recall that this movie seemed to have some critical acclaim. I guess I didn't really do my homework and look into exactly what awards it was nominated for, but it seemed to have gotten, I guess, some attention from Sundance. Was this out of Sundance?
Pretty sure it was out of Sundance. It also won the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. And Timmy Shams was nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role. It was nominated for Best Motion Picture and for Best Achievement for Original Song from Sufjan Stevens, The Mystery of Love. So, yeah, I mean, definitely some Academy recognition there, and then obviously winning the Best Adapted Screenplay.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Looks like it won the BAFTA for Best Screenplay as well. Also nominated for Best Film, Best Leading Actor at the BAFTAs. So I feel like we have to shout out the BAFTAs when we can, just because the Animal Kingdom link. It's like it's like Animal Kingdom, at least for me personally, is like on the pod Rushmore for me, like the movies we watch on the pod Rushmore. So shout out BAFTAs. I know nothing about them, but
we shout out BAFTA because we have to.
Yeah.
That one's for Ashley.
Yeah.
Ashley, if you're listening, that was for you.
Really gonna like that. You made the MVP proud.
Yes.
I mean, so I guess I don't have like too much overall thoughts and personal experience with this movie, other than I enjoyed the journey that this took me on. I think anytime that you're bringing in an LGBTQ plus story, it's an unconventional love story, an unconventional romance story. That's always an interesting thing to experience, because you don't really know how it goes. You're not, at least like from a hetero standpoint, a lot of these things that you're feeling, or a lot of the things that you're seeing, you're not feeling the same way that you would see, in other movies. And so it's cool to see, especially like knowing how it was received and what the dialogue was around this movie. It's, at least for empathy, it's cool to see, like, okay, like this is how, like, a relationship like that blossoms, in this scenario. And so, and it was interesting to see also the dynamics. This wasn't like in America in the 80s or even like in the 90s, but it's like showing, there's still some secrecy there. There's still some tiptoeing around, the situation. So
yeah,
it was cool to see that abroad. And yeah, I enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed seeing Italy, and I also enjoyed the sort of the poetry in some of the way the story was told, like this sort of summertime fling, and then the ending. And this is a spoilery podcast. Like the ending it's not a great ending, and it's like winter now, and there's some symbolism there, and there's symbolism throughout, in the story. And I always appreciate that.
Earlier in the intro, you talked about how we try to, broaden our horizons and everything. And that's totally true. And I think we say this, I know I say it all the time. Like, this is the whole reason that this whole podcast started. A movie like this is a perfect example of why, however long ago it was, I text Ben and we started the little movie club that eventually Matt thankfully became a part of, that turned into this podcast, because this is a movie that had been on my watch list forever. Mainly, honestly, just because of the acclaim it got. I feel like despite what problems you or me or we or the world at large may have with the Academy Awards, or even like the BAFTAs or whatever, if something's nominated for the best picture in one of those categories, it seems like it's at least worth a shot. It's at least worth watching. But there's so much stuff out there to watch, and there's so many stories to see, that a movie like this, regardless of the orientation of the characters or whatever, it's sort of a hard movie to get up the enthusiasm to watch, because you know it's going to be, or at least in the case of this movie, I felt like it was going to be heartbreaking. You know, I knew it was going to make me sad and challenge me in those ways and make me feel whatever emotions that are important to feel. And I think when a movie can pull it off in the way that this movie does is a good experience to have overall. But it's a hard thing to get up for, you know what I mean? Like you got to lock in for 2 hours and know you're going to be sad and you're going to have to really think about some stuff and really, you know, turn some stuff over in the old noggin. So it takes an exercise like this podcast, or, you know, at the base level, our movie club, to get me to watch stuff like this. And once again, I'm so glad that we did it. I wrote in my Letterboxd review, like, I'm not sure if I'll ever watch this movie again, but I'm really, 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 really glad that I've seen it. While I was watching it, I was liking it. You know, I really liked what I was watching, but I wasn't necessarily loving it. I was like, okay, this is like a solid 3 stars. Like, the acting was really good. The films were well crafted, and I felt like it was paced perfectly, because it really is slow and it kind of just plods its way along. But I never felt bored at any moment. I never felt, I wasn't looking at my phone or my watch or anything. I felt like it kept moving, and the burn was intense enough, but it was slow. And like I said, the acting was great. But it wasn't until the very end when we get Dad's monologue, and that thing just hit me it was like a train, you know. It was like, it hit me like, it was like someone threw a brick through the window. You know what I mean? And instantly I teared up, and because the whole time it wasn't necessarily affecting me in the ways that I was expecting it to. But then, Dad's monologue hit me like a gut punch, and, you know, the waterworks started immediately. I thought it was just beautiful. I honestly don't even remember a word he said, but I remember the sentiment behind it.
We rip out so much of ourselves to be cured of things faster that we go bankrupt by the age of 30 and have less to offer each time we start with someone new. But to make yourself feel nothing so as not to feel anything, what a waste.
And just how it made me feel. And I just thought it was just beautiful, and it was totally worth the price of admission, right? Like, it was worth the buildup. It was worth, you know, I hate to say sitting through the rest of it, because I did enjoy it. But anyways, so once that hit, I thought, okay, that in and of itself is worth 4 stars, but you need the rest of the context of the movie for it to land the way it does. So, all in all, like I said, some of the best acting I've seen all around in a while. Even some of the more tertiary characters that you only see a little bit of, like the groundskeeper or whatever. Everyone, this is one of those ones that almost feels, you know, documentary. Like, these all seemed like very real people, real characters. And, you know, Army, despite his cannibalism and the issues around Mr. Hammer, his performance was great. And I was just like, man, there's a lot of things about his story that are a bummer, but just like he was great in this. You know, it would have been, you know, I don't want to, you know, give him too much praise or talk too long about that, but I did think it's a shame that a talent like him can be so easy. Like, it's just interesting to think that a person like that can so easily mask who they are. And I actually don't even know anything about him, really. I just know what I've read in the news. So I don't even want to say any more about that. And Chalamet, you know, knocked it out of the park. And I don't know. Overall, I loved it. I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. And it's just another perfect example of why I'm so glad that we're doing this. And I'm so glad that I get to share it with you guys in the movie club so we can talk about this. And, you know, hopefully someone else can have a similar experience.
Yeah, for sure. I agree quickly with what you said about Army Hammers. Like, it's a bummer. More episodes we do, it's just like, all right, we got to preface this. Like, yes, what this person did was awful, all of that kind of stuff. Like, there's no excuse for this person. And it's just like almost more annoying that, like, but he was really good in this, you know, like,
yeah, he's incredible.
I feel that way about Army Hammer, like with Social Network and Man from U.N.C.L.E., stuff like that. Like, he's a good actor. Unfortunately, it doesn't like offset the horrible shit he's done. But this is a good movie. I think he and Chalamet played well off of each other. It was like beautiful. I I watched the kind of the behind the scenes of it, and they shot this all with just like one focal length, one lens the whole time.
wow.
That was it. And I was like, oh man, that's
Interesting.
a choice for sure to
Yeah.
do that. So, some of the actors, like, it was really interesting though, because there wasn't a whole lot of time in between setups because they didn't have to change lenses and like light for, do all that kind of stuff.
Happen to know which length it was? I'm wondering if that's what lent it to the sort of documentary feel. Because now that I'm thinking back, it does seem like, I don't know what the comparisons are, like if it like a 35 millimeter lens on some sensors or film stocks or whatever. Basically, it seemed like it was like a 50 millimeter on a full frame camera. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like,
Yeah.
Ben, I don't want to get too into the weeds on camera talk there, but I wonder if that's what it is, because that 50 millimeter has that, like, it's supposed to feel like exactly what your eyes can see. So maybe that's kind of what gave it that sort of documentary style feel. And I don't know, that is an interesting choice, and it's cool.
I was wondering that. I didn't, like, in the doc, they didn't talk about what it was, but they, kept emphasizing they wanted wide shots and stuff like that. So that's what made me think like maybe it was like a 35 or something like that. I don't know exactly, but it was a really cool decision and a very like particular and purposeful decision. And I think that added a lot to the beauty of the movie. There's definitely a lot of scenes in here where I was just like, man, that's an awesome shot. Like, it's so cool. Like, one of my favorites was towards the end, and when he's like thrown up in that little fountain, we just have this like shot kind of down this alleyway. There's stairs coming towards you. There's a car parked over to the right side. And like, I don't know, just like the framing of a lot of stuff was so cool to see. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this.
A town like that is fish in a barrel, man. It's like, you stand over there, it's going to look, I'm not, I mean, you're right, but it's just like, I remember thinking in that scene specifically, and we'll talk more about it later, but just like, it's almost not even fair to set your movie in a place like that, because especially to someone, an Anglophile like Anglophiles if you like England, right?
Sure.
That's my confidently saying words. I don't.
We're releasing our dictionary later this year.
Yeah. But as someone who grew up in America, right? Like, there's so much like romanticism and so much like mysticism behind the way I think about a town like that. And when I remember thinking like what it would be like to live in a town like that. And I always have those thoughts when I see a movie like this, but you're right. It's like they used their location to their advantage for sure.
Yeah, it was beautiful, even just from the bike riding around to all kinds of stuff. So it was wonderful. Michael Stuhlbarg was awesome, as he always is. Like you said, his little monologue there at the end really kind of brought it all home. I was wondering how you responded to that, because not that they're the same, but like I was having feelings like I did during Everything Everywhere, during like a certain scene in there where just like it really was a gut punch and hit me.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way during this. Like, I had similar feelings to that, he's just talking about like,
totally,
you throw parts of yourself away to heal faster, but then by the time you're 30, like everything's just like gone, and just some of the stuff that he admits to Chalamet's character in that moment. It was beautiful. I am very glad that we finally got around to this. It's been on my queue for a super long time. So I'm happy that you picked it, Matt, because, it might've been my pick if you hadn't. So I'm glad that we got to talk about this movie.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk a little bit more about Dad's monologue too, is because the whole movie, you're kind of trying to figure out, like, do his parents know? Like, you can see them giving each other knowing glances. Like, they know what's going on. And I don't know exactly what the characters' age differences are. I tried not to get too hung up on the age difference thing. It did. It's noticeable, right?
Yeah.
Like, Hammer's, the Army's character Oliver, is probably in his mid to late 20s, and
Elio's like 17, I think.
Yeah, he's 17, and so that's tough. But like, I feel like knowing that the parents were comfortable with it, and knowing that they seem to know their son really well, and that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, at the beginning of the movie, you don't necessarily know if Oliver's a good guy or not, and like what his intentions are. I was afraid it was going to take us to some like darker places with their sexuality and the exploration, and maybe there would be some like taking advantage. I can't remember the word there, but exploitation, I guess, for lack of a better sense, like Oliver exploiting Elio's relative ignorance and but
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, I liked that we got at the end. I liked the payoff of dad putting it out there and saying, look, I know what's going on here. Like, you don't have to hide from me. I thought it was just really a really nice bow to put on it. And it just made me feel better about everything. You know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
Matt, you said earlier in the intro that we're sort of tiptoeing around everything. And I totally agree. And I think it's interesting that the way we tiptoe around the sexuality and the relationship in this movie is through Elio's perspective. Like, he's embarrassed and he's trying to figure out what's going on. Like, he's got this girlfriend, he's got this older man that's like stolen his heart, and he's confused. He doesn't know what's going on. And I think he's sort of afraid to admit it. And he feels like he needs to tiptoe around and be in the dark. But I just loved that we got the point where dad's like, no, it's okay, man. You have to like live these things and feel it, and we support you. And I don't know. I feel like without, I said it before, but without that monologue, like, I don't know what this movie even is. And it's kind of interesting to think about it as an exercise to write an entire movie to make one point in one monologue.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, this takes place in the 80s, right?
It
was like
yeah, 83, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
The early 80s. So like you have your American character who obviously is like closeted, with a completely different dynamic than Elio. And it seems like when Elio like confides in him and sort of comes out at that monument, it seems like he's like sort of like ready to, establish something. And it's like Oliver that's like, pushing it back. And I think that sort of like I think that feeds into like Elio's sort of like self-consciousness of it.
I know nothing, Oliver.
Well, you seem to know more than anybody else around here.
Well, if you only knew how little I know about the things that matter.
What things that matter?
Too, it's like, whoa, like, you're so uncomfortable with this. Like, should I be uncomfortable with this? Like,
yeah.
I think that adds to the confusion. And I think like that's one thing that like I really appreciate about this story. And it's funny how like these stories that we're covering are all like hetero actors, doing these stories. But it does like there's empathy in their journey that we just like wouldn't otherwise experience, because we're not like, I have, gay friends that I'm never going to be able to talk through some of these things with, they're never going to open up to me about their experience, at least not in a very like intimate way. And so I know that this might not be a real person's experience that I know, but I'm able to see it and sort of feel some of those things that they're feeling, at that time and in their relationship.
Well, I think at that time too, it's like especially difficult, like from my experience, kind of, it's like I was born in 83. And, without going into too much stuff, like my mom and dad got divorced 2 years later because he came out. So I'm like, man, you're like the beginning of the 80s, like height of HIV AIDS, like all this stuff that's going on. Also, society as a whole just isn't really accepting of this at all. So, I was kind of watching it through that lens of like, it's hard enough, I think, when you're doing like, the heteronormative, like guy likes a girl and wants to kiss her, when, in the teens, like that's awkward enough. But then if you're trying to like have this discussion with like an older man and you're not even really sure exactly like what your feelings mean and everything, like you're right. I think we were able to have a lot of empathy with him and just how awkward it is for all of our own experiences. I don't think any of us were super confident in any of our first sexual experiences or, any sort of like romantic, love feeling, anything like that. So it was really easy to see that and kind of relate to that aspect of it. But you're right. I think, that final speech, whatever, from the dad was great. I loved his kind of, he's like, oh, I don't think your mom knows. It's like, I think the mom knew before you did, actually.
Totally.
Like,
and I felt like I got the impression in that moment, I felt like he genuinely thought she didn't know. But then in hindsight, and maybe this is what you're saying, like he was just saving Elio. He's like, no, she doesn't know. But in his head, he's like, she fucking knows. Like she told me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got the impression later that like he was just trying to save Elio there.
That's kind of how I felt too. But even like the mom earlier was kind of saying that to Elio. So I feel like, we get that with that last phone call where it's like, they know everything that's going on. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I did enjoy, to kind of move off of their relationship and just like the movie as a whole, like one of my favorite scenes, I just really enjoyed him testing him kind of in the library a little bit about like, oh, the word apricot comes from this, you know, and just like, we don't know it yet. What the payoff is, and we see we see Oliver just like correct, like, oh, actually, it's this, you know, like, oh my god, dude, okay, whatever, you know. But then we find out like it was all a ruse to see if he actually knew what it was, you know. It's like, oh man.
And the Byzantines, to go on, then borrowed praecox, which became praecokia, which then became berekoki, which is how the Arabs got al-barkuk. It's courtesy of Philology 101.
Flying colors.
He does this every year.
And just like, it was so funny. It's like, he does this every year. I was like, oh, that's pretty fucking funny, actually, that he does this to every student that comes here. He's like, I'm going to test them. I'm going to see A, if they know, and B, if they will correct me, you know, if they have like the confidence to be like, oh, actually, it's not that. So I don't know. That was one of my favorite scenes. I chose something else for my elevator pitch, but I definitely just wanted to talk about that quickly before we got there, because like that scene really, for me, kind of set everything up. It's like, okay, Stuhlbarg, especially like on a rewatch, because I watched the first half a couple times, and you get like the exchanges between Elio and his mom, you know, when the dad starts doing this, and it's like, oh, okay, I see what that is now. Like the first time I thought they were just like, oh boy, here he goes with this again. Yeah. But then you rewatch, it's like, oh, they know what this is. This is the test coming up. Like that's probably why the mom brings in the apricot juice, because this is the setup to the test. You know, it's like, it's cool. I loved that scene quite a bit. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. Well, let's move into our elevator pitch.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Our elevator pitch is, if you had to convince someone to watch this movie, whether you liked it or not, by showing them one scene, you're stuck in an elevator, you're dying to get them to watch this movie, and you have your phone out and you just want to show them one scene to get them to buy them into the movie. What movie or what scene is that, and why? And I'm going to go first because Ben actually just gave my scene.
Oh, did I? Oh my God. I'm so sorry, man. I read that scene. I was like, I don't know which scene that is. I thought it was, I'll tell you after.
No, it's
good. Apologize, man.
No, you're good. You're good. No, we're good. I'm glad you brought that up. I loved that scene. But I loved it for a number of reasons. One, like, give me any scene with just like scholarly snobbery and I'm in. Like, I love seeing, like, I had no idea what they were talking about. You know, they're going a million miles per hour, like talking about, you know, suffixes and prefixes and all that.
Yeah.
But I love it.
Is this a category? Is this a category being born in the moment? Like battle of wits scenes?
Yeah, battle of wits scenes. I love it.
I'm thinking of like, you know, the Princess Bride, the class, the famous poison scene or whatever. Yeah.
Now, a clever man would put the poison into his own goblet because he would know that only a great fool would reach for what he was given. I'm not a great fool, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. But you must have known I was not a great fool. You would have counted on it, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
The scene that came to mind for me was Midnight in Paris, when they're in the art gallery and he's talking about one of the pieces of art and Owen Wilson's like, oh, actually.
And I'm pretty sure she had an affair with Modigliani, then Braque, which is how Pablo met her, Picasso. Of course, what you don't get from this portrait is the subtlety in her beauty. She was just a knockout.
What have you been smoking?
It's Picasso didn't want to do that. And it's like, oh man. I love that stuff.
Rushmore now for this one, but
yeah. Battle of Wits.
Too late. That ship sailed.
No, but one thing that I really loved about that scene is, and Ben, you mentioned just like some of these shots that they took and the composition was really great in this movie. And that scene shines because you have 4 characters in that room, and the way that it shifts, there's also a mirror in the room that can that's showing like the 4th person in the room, so that you're still, every shot is still showing everyone in the room, but someone's always in the mirror depending on the angle that you're in. I just like that was super awesome to watch. So on top of the snobbery, we got some of the coolest shots, in my opinion, of the movie.
Camera snobbery as well, really showing off there.
I mean, oh man, I feel bad that I took that. Honestly, I saw your thing and I was thinking of the scene when they go to that statue, you know, and he's like, is this World War One or World War Two? Like, oh, this is World War One. It's like, oh, the Battle of whatever. I never even heard of that. I was like, oh, actually, it was the most like deadly battle. Yeah, that's why I was like thinking of this scholarly snobbery. It's like, because he was kind of like, actually 170,000 people died. So that's what I thought you were going with. I feel bad. I didn't mean to steal your thunder there on your piece.
No thunder stolen. That it was a great setup, a great lead into elevator pitch. So I think we're good. Yeah,
it worked wonderfully.
It's like we planned it.
And the statue scene, that statue scene's great too, because that's and maybe this is what you said, Matt, but that's the moment where I felt like that's where the roles kind of flipped, because Elio seemed so much more confident than Oliver in that moment. And I feel like that was he really built up to that. He got to do the snobbery to Oliver, right? He got to intellectually overpower Oliver, which I think was cool to see. And that's where we really start to see the dynamic that you were talking about earlier, where we really see how like innocent and ignorant Elio is about what he's going through. Because, I mean, if you think about his environment, like his parents are obviously cool with this and they're supportive of the choices he makes and the life that he lives. For all we know, that seems to be all Elio's life is, right? Like it seems pretty insulated and pretty small in that regard. Whereas Oliver, he seems like he's a jet setter. He's got this big life and he's obviously, seems to be obviously comes from privilege, and he runs in a whole different world. He has a whole lot of life experience and he knows exactly how dangerous this relationship could be, especially at that time. And so I think it's a really cool way to look at the different ways that they're approaching this relationship. And I think it's cool to see Elio kind of be, for lack of a better term, on top in the relationship there. For sure. But so either way, those are both really good scenes. I picked another, it's hard not to pick an Oliver and Elio scene here. I mean, quite frankly, the scene that I think it's difficult not to think of the apricot scene when you think about this movie after having seen it. That was some of the most explicit, non-explicit like piece of filmmaking I've ever seen. Like I was like pearl clutching. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? But that's not my elevator pitch. I wouldn't show that to someone because I would want them to be as surprised as I was. But I picked you kind of mentioned it earlier, where he throws up into the fountain and they're wandering the streets at night, and they dance with the goth couple outside of their car, because I laughed out loud. I thought that was just so fucking funny. And I think a good way to, if it were someone like me that's heard of this movie but had whatever reservations, I would want them to know, like, no, there's some levity here. Like, you can just watch these people have a fun night out and have this like cute little relationship and go dance in the streets. Like, like I've talked about my travels a little bit on this podcast, but like in a lot of ways, that's something that like I think any of us would have done, like a night out when you're young and you're with a new partner, or even with a friend, and like you come across this scene of this goth couple, whatever, dancing in front of their car at 1 a.m. Like, I'd probably go hang out with them for a minute too, So I just would want someone to know that, like, gosh, I don't want to use a word normal to describe this, but there's just something that's like familiar. You know what I mean? It's something that everyone can relate to. And I think obviously everyone can relate to falling in love and maybe having like a secret crush or a secret relationship or whatever. Those are all things that people can relate to. But I would just want someone to know that, like, this movie is also fun, right? Like, you're not the whole time, you're not just going to have your heart crushed. Like, there are some moments of levity, and you'll laugh a little bit at least, and it looks cool. Like, who doesn't want to watch people wander the streets at night in Italy? You know,
for sure. Yeah, I love that scene a lot. Like again, the statue one I like, because I think it's like the first time I think that we see them both indirectly address the attraction towards each other,
right?
So that it kind of like takes off into a new like act two. I mean, it's much later, but it's like the second part of this movie. It's like, okay, now we're addressing the fact that there's an attraction there. The one I picked was also, I think, just kind of like a character defining thing, speaking of the snobbery and stuff. And it's when Elio's playing guitar outside, and then Oliver's like, oh, play that again. He was like, come with me. And he goes inside of the piano and just starts playing like a remix version of this song. And Oliver's like, no, play it like you did like outside. He's like, oh, well, I just played it the way the list would if he had covered Bach's version. He's like, no, play it normal. Like, play like you did before. And then he does another one, but he's like kind of doing like his version of like headbanging just while playing the piano though. And he's like, you changed it again. He's like, yeah, I changed it a little bit. It's the way if Busoni had played like covered Lit's version. It's just like, oh my God, and then he really starts to walk off, and then he plays the original version from Bach for him.
I can't believe you changed it again.
Oh, I changed it a little bit.
Yeah, why?
I just played it the way Busoni would have played it if he'd altered Liszt's version.
And what is wrong with Bach, the way Bach would have played Bach's
Bach never wrote it for the guitar. In fact, we're not even sure Bach wrote it at all.
Forget I asked.
It's like there's this like snobbery that comes out, like how super talented he is. Like his hobby is like transcribing his music. Like that's what we see him doing all the time. It's like, okay, yeah, but I mean, this is also early 80s. It's not like he had, it's like his Walkman and transcribing music. That's like the two things I think we associate the most with Elio throughout this whole thing. So I really liked their kind of back and forth battle there. I think that's what kind of led up to their argument, like in the car. Was like, you have to sit in the back, the other guy sits up front, and then the truce and all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed that scene though quite a bit. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it's a cool joust. Like it's a fun way to watch them flirt, right? And it's like it's because earlier I said the statue scene is where Elio finally is on top, and I feel like this is like they keep one-upping each other in this scene, and then they kind of land on a level playing field. And I think they really respected each other in that moment, because Oliver obviously has a respect for the talent that Elio has, but then Elio's also like, oh, he's got a good ear. He knows stuff. He's into the same kind of stuff that I'm like. And so it was kind of a cool back and forth flirting scene. So yeah, it's an awesome scene.
Yeah, I love that scene as well. That was a runner up for me on mine. But if we're not careful, we're going to be late to the Adam Driver drive-in here. We don't want to miss
he gets so mad.
He gets very upset because he really puts it out. Yeah, temper. He gives us this time slot to put in a couple movies, and if we're not there,
can't waste his time.
Gets very angry. So we're gonna drive on over there.
I just had sex. I'm about to eat nachos. It's the greatest moment of my life.
For the Adam Driver drive-in double feature, we want to know what you would pair this with. This movie, if you had to put this at the drive-in double feature, which are you watching first, and what are you pairing it with? Let's start with Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it pretty much every week, and I'll say it again. I find like the simplest topic I can. Like, how do I repeat this? And this week's topic is just like Americans falling in love in Europe. So I went with Before Sunrise. Like Tyler mentioned earlier, shooting this in Italy. Before Sunrise was shot in Vienna. And they're both places where it's like unfair how beautiful it is. Like it's hard to make it look ugly. It's just like
totally.
Every shot they do is awesome. Just like riding on the tram is beautiful, like all that. So, I mean, I think we all kind of felt that familiarity while watching this from our experience with Before Sunrise. So while it's not necessarily like my favorite out of the trilogy, it just felt like it matched the most because they're like starting to fall in love here and getting to know each other. And I mean, that was one of the takeaways from this pod that I will always be grateful for, is us watching that Before trilogy. And I love that movie a lot. And the closing credits, like with all those, all the scenes of sunrise, all these locations that they were at, like it just beautiful scenery. It was really just kind of like taking my heart with this, and same with Call Me by Your Name. So that's why I wanted to match these two.
I love it.
Totally. Well, that was an honorable mention for me. And one thing I said it before on the pod for the Before trilogy, that end credits roll that you talked about was my favorite part, because I just love the juxtaposition of seeing all these places that held so much magic just being so ordinary. And I've always been fascinated with juxtapositions like that, even exploring, like just recently I did a road trip through Nevada, and we stayed at this old hotel that was renovated to look exactly like it was when it was built in 1907. It's supposedly haunted. I think it's the oldest hotel in Nevada. It's in a town called Tonopah. And I really appreciated the renovation of it and the restoration of it, just because I just like seeing I like imagining the magic that's happened in a place like that.
Yeah.
I imagine not everything that happened in that saloon and that hotel was necessarily beautiful or magic, but regardless, there's a history there, and I like to see that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to walk into a hotel lobby that's completely empty, and then see it later in the evening when everyone's at the bar, and see magic happening. You know what I mean? So that I've always been interested in that kind of stuff, and we get that a little bit here, like in the bike ride scenes. I like that the camera holds a little bit, and there's one scene I'm thinking of in particular where they come around a corner and they almost run into a pedestrian, and she kind of just moves, and it looked very ordinary for that. Like there's people ride bikes there, and so pedestrians are always dodging bikes, and I liked to see that she wasn't bothered by it. She just kept going on her way. It held the camera, they ride off, and we just see her walking down those cobblestone streets just a little bit, and you just kind of get a glimpse into what it would be like outside of our story in ordinary life there. And I always love moments like that. And so I think that's a really good link, and that's why I put it as an honorable mention. But when I was thinking about doing this double feature, I really wanted something to laugh at. Well, not laugh at. That's the wrong thing. That's the wrong way to put it. But I wanted to laugh after watching this. I wanted a little bit of like, let's lighten the mood, right? So we'll start with Call Me by Your Name. And then, heavy disclaimer, it's been forever since I've seen the movie I'm about to link it with, and I don't really remember that much about it, but I want to watch The Birdcage. I was thinking about what's an LGBTQ plus movie that could make us laugh, and the first thing that popped in my head was The Birdcage. And, to be honest, I didn't do a whole lot of research, which is something I would recommend everyone do if you're going to go put your opinions online for the world to see forever. Don't do any research and just wing it. Just throw it out there. You'll be fine. Probably. Because it seems like I watched the trailer and I watched a few scenes from The Birdcage before this. So I did a little bit of research, and I do worry a little bit that part of that movie and what makes it so funny is that we're laughing at the characters and not necessarily with them all the time. I don't know for sure, but I mean, it's definitely, they're playing caricatures, right? Like Robin Williams is essentially playing Big Gay Al, and I can't remember the other character's name, but there's like one of the characters they call is a drag queen. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of tough now, but at the time, the reason I wanted to link it, and the reason I think it's still important, is because from my memory growing up, The Birdcage was one of the few movies that was an LGBTQ plus themed movie that really was embraced by the mainstream,
Yeah.
And I think obviously Gene Hackman, Robin Williams, all that like have a lot to do with that. And I haven't seen this movie in a long time, so I'm not totally sure. I do think it is at least sensitive enough to these characters and their actual orientation and whatever, that it's still okay. I don't know if this movie's been canceled, I guess is what I'm saying. But my memory of it is it was a movie about gay people and about transsexual people that was accepted by the mainstream and a lot of people knew and enjoyed. And so I think it's interesting to watch these two movies in back to back, because we have a movie that was made recently about a time when it wasn't okay to be gay. Well, you know what I mean? In the larger sense, as far as like the public was concerned.
Yeah.
Obviously the three of us don't feel that way. And then we have a movie that was made back when the society felt this way, that now, like I said, could seem problematic in some ways. Like I said, like, watching some of these scenes in the trailer, it's definitely seemed like more of a caricature than a true representation. But again, every person's different, and I don't know. And I still think it's relevant and at least worth watching. So anyways, all that disclaimer aside, we're going to watch Call Me by Your Name and then Birdcage.
I love The Birdcage so much. I think it's a remake of a French movie, kind of obviously followed the same thing, but yeah, I don't think this movie's like canceled or anything like that. I think
I just didn't know. I was like,
Nathan Lane character is like, elevating things, as like the drag queen, and Robin Williams is kind of, extra flamboyant, but that's the whole point, because their son is bringing home his like fiance and her parents, who are very right wing and like moral Christian, whatever, quote unquote people. And so they have to put on this front of just like, oh, we've got to be, not ourselves, and so I think that's part of the whole payoff is like, have them be a little bit more elevated so we understand just how much they're having to pull back.
Okay.
I think if anything's, I don't know if it's cancelable, but it's like over the top. It's the whole Hank Azaria character. Like he's like extremely, flamboyant stuff, but I still think it's all very intentional and, not at anyone's expense or anything like that. I think it's all, purposeful and pays off in the story. So I love Birdcage. I think it's a great selection.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you said that. Just because, like I said, I like watching the things that I did watch. I was like, oh, is this like not good? Like,
yeah,
did we cancel this? Because I was like, oh, they're really. I mean, look, I don't know every gay person in the world, but I don't know any gay person like anything I saw in any of those trailers. You know what I mean? So, like, I would hate to just flippantly put something out there and have people be like, dude, that movie fucking sucks. You know what I mean? So
no, Diane Weiss is never getting canceled. So any movie she's in is good to go.
Okay.
So mine, I think I can't remember what I actually went with My Own Private Idaho, but I might be doing the same movie again for this one. But I know that I had talked about Luca. Luca's definitely like the Disney version, way more so like this movie than for My Own Private Idaho. I feel like not only does it take place in like an Italian type world, but it's very much, I don't know, it's got a lot of the same beats. It ends a lot happier than this one does. But I'd probably pick Luca.
Plenty of happy endings in this one, though. I'll tell you that.
Hey,
there we go. There it is.
There it is. Had to get it in there. While we're talking about the Pixar movie, let's talk about happy endings.
Yeah.
It seems appropriate.
No, but it was interesting. Tyler brought up earlier, and this is going to be one of my honorable mentions. This movie could have gone a darker turn where there's more exploitation, and it reminded me a little bit as I was watching it of Power of the Dog. What's interesting about this movie and Power of the Dog, and the thing is, honestly, my horizons aren't very broad in this realm, so maybe I'm just maybe things are better than they seem, but it does break down sort of the stereotype, a lot of like the stereotypes that surround gay characters in movies. There's in Power of the Dog and in this one, there's more masculinity than you're used to seeing. It shouldn't be surprising, but I think since those characters aren't brought into the mainstream enough that you don't like, it does seem like surprising for some reason. And so when you're seeing this, like these masculine characters that, in the Power of the Dog, he's just straight up, homophobic to I can't remember the character's name, but he's like very rude, very upfront, calling him slurs in front of his friends, to sort of, conceal his own orientation and in this one, it's not so much that Oliver's not necessarily, he's not doing any of those like things that Benedict Cumberbatch does, but he's able to go both ways easily. He's not, he's hiding in plain sight, essentially. Even his approaches to Elio are in like your stereotypical masculine way. It's not in some, effeminate or flamboyant way that we're just used to seeing in pop culture, essentially. And so I wanted to bring that one up because Power of the Dog does go the exploitation route. And until the end of the movie, you think that Benedict Cumberbatch's character is like successfully exploiting him. You find out that the other guy's actually the smarter one that has, kind of turned the table there, but kind of a cool twist. In that regard, it kind of reminded me of that because you also have like the age dynamic there as well. It's like, how old are these two characters?
Yeah.
This guy's like taking this guy out, on the mountain. So that'd be my really honorable mention.
For sure. I thought of another honorable mention besides Before Sunrise, and this actually might get me canceled, but I might pair Call Me By Your Name based off the apricot scene. I might pair it with James and the Giant Peach.
Okay, there you go.
I'll be here all night.
Here all night, folks.
Leave your comments.
So my video froze on Matt's disappointed look, And that's exactly what I needed in my lap. I just got like 10 seconds.
I'm the prude of the
Matt
pod, folks.
just looking so disappointed in me.
If you're looking for the
perfect.
prude, look no further. Now, I guess to tie this one up, we'll go to our Rushmore Mountain.
These are OR scrubs. Oh, are they?
This theme for Rushmore, we are going to pick movies that share a song title. So it doesn't matter what came out first. We're not talking about movies that were based on a song or songs that were based on a movie. They can have it doesn't matter which one came first. Just movies and songs that share a song title. Tyler, let's hear yours.
Okay, yes, let's hear mine. Well, so I've got to go Purple Rain. It just has to happen. Not only though I genuinely love the song, I genuinely love the movie. It's probably it's close to my favorite movie we watched last year, which is kind of crazy. Like the more time goes on, I've thought about Purple Rain. I guess I would say I've wanted to watch Purple Rain more than I've wanted to watch anything else we covered in season 1. So
nice.
Yeah, Purple Rain's got to go on there. Boys Don't Cry is a great song. I actually don't know if I know the movie now that I think about it, and that goes against my own personal rules, but that's okay. Footloose is, it has some fun local ties, especially closer to Matt than me or Ben. They filmed that down in Lehigh and Utah County area. And that song is so much fun. Like anytime that comes on at a wedding, that's like the only song that I can dance well to.
Dude.
Well, okay. I don't know if I can dance well to it, but I have fun dancing to it. So
that's what you feel good dancing to.
Yeah, I feel great. Yeah. Totally.
I got we just watched Top Gun the other day. It was actually like the first time for me, and I got thinking like, man, Kenny Loggins has some good movie soundtrack songs. He's got a couple on there. We got the one for Caddyshack. We got Footloose. Like that's a solid list. He's got his own Rushmore of Kenny Loggins movie songs.
He's made his imprint on pop culture for sure.
He has indeed.
Dude, totally. Well, speaking about making an imprint on pop culture, it has an imprint on Ben and I's shared culture. We're going to go with Where Eagles Dare. It's a Misfits song. I've never seen the movie, but I don't care. It breaks my rules. That's 2 times I broke my rule in my own, on my own rule, my own list. But the Misfits are near and dear to Ben and I's heart, having played in a Misfits tribute band for years. And Where Eagles Dare is one of our favorites to play. Well, it was one of mine. I don't know about you. But we were the rhythm section. So we were, we're joined at the,
holding it down.
We're joined at the heart there. And yeah, so Boys Don't Cry, Footloose, Where Eagles Dare, and Purple Rain. Gonna round out my Rushmore.
Boys Don't Cry. Hilary Swank won the Academy Award for Best Lead Actress.
You know what? I'm gonna switch Men in Black with Boys Don't Cry.
Perfect.
Because I actually
your Oscar win.
I think I do know every word to the Men in Black song if it's playing. I couldn't do it right now, but if it was playing, I could sing along.
Yeah.
And I've seen.
I really wish I had it queued up on this board here. But.
We'll have Tyler do it for a Patreon exclusive.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Give the people what they want.
Men in Black song. Okay, cool. So mine, I'm also gonna do Purple Rain. I don't know. Like I hate to have repeats, but if anything, watching that movie made the songs mean more.
Totally.
Like the Purple Rain song, like realizing when that comes in the movie, like what it's following, all the stuff with his dad and stuff. I'm like, oh man, this is a really deep song. This is intense.
Totally.
So yeah, that one.
I want to let the people know that Ben thought of Purple Rain first, even though it's one of my favorite songs and movies. I just didn't think of it. But I saw it on his list and I stole it from him. So I want you to have that credit. It's important to me.
Well, it's all good. I think
Tyler.
I might swap it out with something, but I just wanted to talk about it for a sec. I have to go Dazed and Confused for a few reasons. I love the movie, but also that Led Zeppelin 1 album changed my life, made me want to be a drummer. I love that album so much. So I have to throw that on there. Iron Man. It just kind of explains itself there.
Your list is so
and That Thing You Do.
The Oneaters. That's the Wonders.
Which I think one of you guys mentioned while we were talking. Like, oh yeah, you have to pick that. That's just like one of the best songs that came from a movie ever, and also share the title. Yeah, along that line, I am going to swap out Purple Rain, but I'm keeping it in the Rain family. I'm going to go Singing in the Rain because that's just like one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's, I don't know, I went and saw it performed with an orchestra. My mom and I went and saw it together, and it was just like, it was one of the coolest things. So I love that movie so much.
That's great.
And that way we have like a little more diversity on the list here. So yeah, Singing in the Rain, Dazed and Confused, Iron Man, and That Thing You Do.
Love it.
Actually, I think Ben's list is actually my list.
You're breaking all kinds of rules.
Your list is so much better than mine. I mean, I like all my picks, but I don't know. Your list is so much
We
cooler
all got
than mine.
great lists.
God damn it, Ben.
Well, you like Ben's list. Wait till you get a load of my list.
Oh, let's hear
it. I chose Boys in the Hood. It's one of my favorite movies. R.I.P. John Singleton. It's also, a classic Eazy-E song. Godzilla by Eminem has been on my son's playlist, the edited version, but he absolutely loves it. And I mean, I gotta say, it's one of Eminem's newer songs, and he's still got it, man.
Yeah,
he's got it.
The old man.
Can we get Tom to sing that on for the Patreon too?
Yeah, I will duet an Eminem song with Tom.
Let's get
like
Ben
right
Black
now.
and Godzilla.
That's funny.
Get him out of bed. Let's do it.
He gets so fast at the end of that Tom actually asked me, he's like, is he actually saying things here? I'm like, yes,
he actually is.
And let me specify which Godzilla movie. We're going the Matthew Broderick version there for Ben.
Yeah, I didn't know there was another one.
Yeah.
That was it.
Then I got to go.
Godzilla versus Kong is dope.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the newer Godzillas are sweet. Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, man.
Gotta love the Baz Luhrmann movie, but also the Dire Straits song is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Same here.
And then we're going to round this out with Stand By Me.
Love it.
Can't go wrong.
It's a great choice. Honestly, we could have done like 100 songs. Just
totally.
I'm quickly read through my honorable mentions. I had Scream, again, another Misfits one, the newer Misfits, Poetic Justice, Kendrick Lamar, Straight Outta Compton, we kind of talked about already. Man on the Moon, which is one of my favorite biographies of all time. Not a huge REM person, but I do love that movie. And then for the MVP, I have to shout out Weird Science because that's just a fantastic movie and a great song.
How to do it. Well, what pod was it that I just went on forever about how much I love the song Last Christmas by Wham?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I remember talking about it at length. So I have to shout it out here. I've never seen the movie Last Christmas. I do love Emilia Clarke, so maybe it'll make it to maybe it'll make it on a Christmas watch party. Who knows? But I genuinely love that song. People complain about it at Christmas time. I'm like, I can't get enough. I will say I only listen to it around Christmas for obvious reasons, but
for sure,
I never get sick of it. I fucking love that song. So, and then The Gambler. I've never seen the movie The Gambler, but I saw it on a list. I love that song, and I was just in Vegas for a few months, and so that song was in my head quite a bit. And then another Will Smith song, Wild Wild West. It's well documented that Will Smith was a big part of my movie watching life, my young adult life, watching movies, and
perfect.
Love it. Those are great honorable mentions. Is there anything else that we needed to cover on this movie before we sign out?
I think we got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's the second film that we've covered for this LGBTQ plus round. Honestly, it's worth checking these stories out. One of the best things that we can do is listen and understand to marginalized communities. We have no way otherwise of knowing their experiences unless we have, friends and family, obviously. But, for a lot of people, especially in Utah, sometimes those friends and family are farther between or just straight up uncomfortable sharing those experiences with you. So highly recommend this movie. But we also just recommend, just as a podcast, getting out there, listening to these stories, experiencing this art, and understanding and learning more. We're certainly grateful that we did, but thank you for joining us on this episode, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Everyone.
Ciao.
Now, when I say Romeo and Juliet, who comes to mind? Dana?
Claire Danes.
That's right, Claire Danes. Who else?
Leonardo DiCaprio,
right? Who else? Well, you know, someone else was involved in that movie who in some ways is as famous as Leonardo DiCaprio. And his name's William Shakespeare.